bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Free Fall. Good evening, everyone. This is Andy Steele. Thanks again for tuning in. And tonight the guest is Erik Gale. He is a candidate for the Democratic Party for State House of Representatives in New Mexico. And what's amazing about this guy and his campaign is that he's essentially running it off of his iPhone. He's doing what we've hypothesized on this show about somebody being able to potentially do before. His campaign webpage is really a Google Plus page, and he's been successful. Like I said, he won his primary against another Democratic candidate, and he's headed to the big one, the big election in November. And he's an avid 9/11 truth supporter, very unapologetic about it, and includes it in his campaign website. So he'll be talking about that. He'll be talking about some other issues that he is also passionate about, included in this interview, and just about what he's done to be successful. And this can serve as a good primer for anyone out there listening who might want to run for office too. So stay tuned. I'll be playing that for you later on. Happy 4th of July to everybody, or I should say happy almost 4th of July. This program is airing on July the 3rd, a night before the holiday. And it's the 4th of July episode, this one right here, of 9/11 Freefall. That we've had. This show, of course, started back in 2012, and every time this holiday comes up, I always try to think of some special way that I can commemorate it. The first episode, this was still a new show, and me and Bernie just talked about our own reflections on things we saw taking place at the time, and then the next show, I think I had Richard Gage on and Pam Senzi. Today we have Erik Gale, and he's a great guest because he shows you exactly what one guy can do, the power that one person can have, and how we can actually use this political process to retake our country and to shine a light on issues like the topic we talk about all the time, the controlled demolitions of Towers 1 and 2 and 7 in New York City on 9/11, and the scientific evidence that proves that that is exactly what happened that day. This evidence that our congressmen run from, that the media does everything to obfuscate and shield the public from, not working in America's best interests. And it's a holiday to be patriotic, and they drag out the Founding Fathers, images of them, actors playing them in order to sell you deals at Walmart and at Target. And, of course, that's what happens with every holiday. Everything's about commercialism now. And the TV shows will talk about the Revolutionary War and play these historic recreations. There might be some dramatic movies to illustrate the lives of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or whatever. Nice mood music added to them. Try to give you that nice patriotic feeling and to talk about how wonderful this country is because we have freedom, because we are free. And people many times tend to equate freedom with all of the stuff that we have in this country. You know, the fact that we have 24-hour Walmarts that you can get up and go get Pepsi at in the middle of the night if you want, or the fact that everybody, most people, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people have cars, at least some form of transportation, that we don't have sewage running through our streets, and that's a great thing. And truly, we do live in a very great country. I've lived outside this country, folks, and I can tell you that if you have a flush toilet, you're living better than a lot of people in this world. So we have many blessings in this country and many great things. And I think that many people, when they're born into this situation, born into being an American, we tend to think that this freedom exists because some beings, the universe, God, whatever, ordained it. That some higher power looked down upon its creation and said, okay, the people in this part of the world are going to have freedom, and the people in this part of the world are not. And so therefore these people are better. We may not consciously think it, but we subconsciously think it. We think it in our superior attitudes, in our arrogance, and our talking down to people in other cultures, our trying to tell them how they should live their lives, how they should be, how they should do things. I mean, I found a lot, just from my own travels, and I haven't traveled the entire world, but a lot of times people know what their problems are in their own society. They don't need some foreigner coming in and telling them what to do. They know what the issues are. Many times it's their own governments, but that's the side issue. Don't want to digress too much. You know, it's funny, I just moved to a new town here in upstate New York, very nice little beachside community, and one of the first things I noticed when I moved here is that there's this little tiny church. It was built in the 1880s, and it almost looks like that church on Little House on the Prairie, if anyone's ever watched that show. I mean, it looks just like that, and it's been preserved to look just like that. Nothing has really changed about it. And what's really nice is when you walk into this church is on the sides, the walls, you can lift them up. So in the summertime, you lift up portions of the wall to let the air in, and the lake water rolls off over the beach and comes into the church, and it's better than air conditioning. You're getting that nice seawater, lake water, filling your nose as you're sitting there and listening. And I decided to attend the Mass, not because I'm particularly religious. I just wanted to see what kind of activities they do in this church. And I've never been one for doing the praying or the singing. I just essentially sit there like an audience member, like somebody watching a stage performance. But what struck me is how so many people now sound like folks in the alternative media. Sound like folks in the alternative media as they sounded 5 or 6 years ago. And this particular preacher's sermon that week was about the 4th of July. And one of the first things that he said is that his first thing that he brought up was freedom. And how we're on the road to losing it. And he didn't go any deeper than that, really. He didn't, obviously he didn't talk about 9/11, but he reinforced the idea that freedom is not free. And that sounds like a cliche. It sounds like something we hear said all of the time by many people. But do we ever really explore what that means? About how this situation, this fact that we don't have sewage running through our streets, this fact that we have luxuries, that we have nice air conditioning, that we have the ability to criticize our government, that's being attacked right now, but we still have the ability to have shows like this one. You know, how this stuff exists, and we tend to just take it for granted. We think it exists because it's just the way it is, and we think that preserving all of this is by enjoying it and keeping our mouths shut, by being good little boys and girls, because the government can take it away if it wants to. I mean, that's kind of the mentality now. That's what we get told by the other side, essentially. How dare you talk about physics and common sense? How dare you talk about the science of the building destructions in New York when you live in this country and you enjoy all of its blessings? Look at what this country's done for you. It's provided you an education. It's provided you a job. It's provided an atmosphere in which you can walk safely at night, depending on where you live. I guess I can. Not everyone can say that. It's provided you all these things, cable TV. Look at this. And you can call into C-SPAN. You can have shows like this one. How dare you use that free speech to talk about this controversial topic? And I'm going to tell you, folks, that is not how freedom is preserved. Because what we have now, all of the blessings that we have now, were not obtained, were not created, were not built. The foundation of this country was not built by the people saying, keep your mouth shut. Let things stand as they are. Don't rock the boat. That's just not in our nature. That's not in our blood. And it's listening to people like that that usually marks the first step towards losing our freedom. And we've already taken that first step. We're on step 2 and 3 and 4 now. Because freedom isn't free. It doesn't just exist because it exists. It's not like the sun. It's not just like up there in the sky regardless of what you do. Alright, freedom is a very precious thing. I mean, this time in history, this America, this 200 years, this country is a very odd thing. It's unique. It's unnatural. The normal state of human affairs throughout history has been a lot more miserable than this. So we got a lot to protect, and it all comes back down to the topic we talk about every week, the controlled demolitions of the buildings in New York. I mean, I can't overstate that. It's like dealing with a bully. If you let them get away with pushing you around on a topic as big as this, if you let them bring those buildings down in what is obvious and provable controlled demolitions, when the evidence is so clear, when the physics proves it. I mean, physics doesn't change just because there's a political agenda attached to it. All right, when you let them get away with that, you're giving them a free pass to do whatever they want in the future. And we need to remember that as we're waving our flags and enjoying our burgers on the 4th of July. That all of this talk of freedom means nothing unless you step up and do what is necessary. Take the responsibility to defend it, to understand that freedom isn't free. And I want to take this time right now to highlight an article that's up at ae911truth.org right now. It's written by AE911 Truth staff. It says, 9/11 Truth, good for America. Make this Independence Day a celebration of 9/11 Truth. And this goes back to what I've been talking about for months, about how we need to reinforce the message that this is a good thing for the country, that what we're talking about and acknowledging the reality of what happened to the buildings in New York is a good thing for America. It's in our tradition. It's in our blood. It'll make the country better. So I'm going to read the first paragraph from this article. It says, all over the country this Independence Day, 9/11 Truth activists will be handing out a new brochure, 9/11 Truth, good for America, at Independence Day parades, picnics, and fireworks displays. We've got a patriotic message to share with our fellow Americans, and we are not shying away from our task this year. Join us in this nationwide public education effort. And it goes on to say the beautifully patriotic brochure comes complete with all positive benefits of the 9/11 Truth message, along with an insert highlighting the key evidence at the World Trade Center. And you can download it and hand it out. Print it out and hand it out, folks. Okay? Now, I'm not going to read the whole brochure, but I want to just go over very quick here. Now, on the front of this brochure, you see it says 9/11 Truth, good for America at the top. Nice flag and outline of our country. And then it says under it, bullet points that are raised. And the first one is stops the wars of aggression. And then it says restores our economy. It terminates the NSA's unconstitutional global spying. It restores our civil liberties. It abolishes the torture, extraordinary rendition, and the assassination of U.S. citizens. And within the pamphlet, it goes deeper into these bullet points, explains sort of how 9/11 Truth does that. What I want to draw attention to is the last one, the last bullet point. It says it restores our country's moral foundation and our faith in our government. And it's very important to read that. And the article actually highlights the blurb underneath that bullet point. So I'm going to read it for you. It says, America is you and the people around you. As we incorporate the truth about 9/11, the history of America in the 21st century will once again reflect our moral might. It will record our willingness to face reality and our ability to take the proper steps to reverse the consequences of the post-9/11 world. Just as the colonists showed resolve in freeing themselves from the shackles of Great Britain, and just as abolitionists demonstrated strength in helping end slavery in America, today we can, as a united people, face the truth of 9/11 and demand accountability from our government. This achievement will demonstrate the legendary fortitude that makes our country great. It will be one of the greatest stories ever told, and it will signal to the world that our nation truly stands for liberty and justice for all. And next to that paragraph, it has a quote from Abraham Lincoln. He said, "I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts." And folks, I have great faith in the American people too. I have faith in you in this audience, the dedicated listeners to the show, the dedicated activists who've been doing everything that they can to get the message out. And don't be tired. Don't let it get to you. Don't think that your efforts are for nothing. You are reaching more and more people. So you need to bring this message to as many people as you can. And you can do that again by downloading the brochure, letting people see as you hand this brochure out to them at different events, not just on the 4th of July, but other events throughout the summer, beyond the summer, letting them see that the people who perpetrated 9/11, the people who cover it up, don't represent America. They are not the face of America. We are. We are the real backbone of this country. We are the real leaders, and we are the real spirit. And we are the people that they're going to talk about in the history books. You, out there. The real American, speaking the truth, awakening others. And we will have a better nation for it. We will be stronger. And as this country becomes stronger, so will the world, because it will learn from our example as we become the nation we've always pretended to be. All right, what we're going to do is what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that starting now. And that is 10 seconds.
Erik Hawks is a 2014 Democratic candidate for District 49 of the New Mexico House of Representatives. On June 3rd, he won the Democratic primary and is now headed into the general election in November. He's an avid supporter of the 9/11 Truth Movement, and he's very candid about it. I want to know more about him, and I know this audience does too. Erik, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Now, before we get into 9/11 and the campaign, tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your background before you went down this path.
Well, I began my first career was as a financial market forecaster. It was technical analysis, Elliott wave analysis, Fibonacci ratios, that kind of stuff. And then I progressed into the solar industry. And from there, I've now moved into the politics.
That is amazing. And I love when you bring up Fibonacci. I just kind of bring back a memory to me because I grew up and thinking math wasn't all that interesting. I did okay in high school, and then I took this class in college called Math for Liberal Arts where they talked about Fibonacci numbers and all these deeper concepts, and it made me have a new appreciation for math, and this is where you actually start applying it to the real world. So I advise the listeners to look into Fibonacci even more, but please continue.
Well, I guess if I were to analyze it, I've just become more and more involved in finding a solution to the problems that we face. At first it was finding the patterns in the markets to substantiate the arguments for the changes that we're looking at. And then the solar industry was my attempt to join the defense. And then when I left that industry, I started looking into the policies of the solar industry, and it just kind of progressed until now. I'm looking at public-private partnerships being used to build a fascist for-profit police state. And basically it all began with 9/11 and the Patriot Act. and, you know, DHS and the NSA surveillance programs, and all of that started with 9/11. So and we all know 9/11 was an inside job. There are plenty of videos and analysis by people who are much smarter than myself that you can watch online.
Now, I'm curious, what woke you up to that personally? I mean, especially with the controlled demolition evidence that we talk about every week on this show, what made you look at 9/11 differently than most of America and realize that we had a problem with the official story?
Well, I was first watching Alex Jones and InfoWars beginning in probably 1998. So I was, you know, watching all of that for a long time.
So you already had this background. You already knew that governments lie about major events and that there was a very high likelihood when 9/11 happened that there was more to the story than what we were being told. A lot of people had that background. And I guess I say a lot of people because the people I talk to now on a large scale are people who are awake to this. So it seems like, maybe to me, it seems like there was a lot of people, but the majority of the public wasn't aware of this part of the reality spectrum, that governments do lie, that they could actually bring down these buildings in the middle of New York in front of everybody and then lie about how it was really done, that they could just use it to push an agenda. The majority of the American public hadn't even had that notion that this could be a part of the story introduced to them yet. So you actually represented a minority, but you were already susceptible to these facts, to this the way the world really is. So it sounds like you really had no hard time looking into this and knowing right from the very get-go that there are the problems with the official story as it was formed.
That's correct.
Now, what did you consider to be the most strongest evidence? I know you referenced experts, smarter than you or I, but for yourself, what really sealed it for you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there was a period of time where I watched the videos online religiously, 4 or 5 hours a day. So I've seen the videos with the explosions being set off, the demolition explosions going down the side of the building, and, all of the other just crazy information about the story itself.
It's funny because we talked about the squibs last week, and it's one of those things that when you see it, it's like you can't unsee it. And Dave Hooper was the guest. He's got his new movie coming out, and he makes reference to that. It's very common sense. You, layman, sees those squibs going off, those explosions going down the side of the building, right ahead of the collapse line, and it's not air because there's building material in it. And again, it's one of those things you don't unsee once you see it. And so it just takes strong people to not lie to themselves and make themselves try to unsee it, to not look away from it. And there's more and more people who are having that strength to not look away from it too. So you are an avid supporter of the truth movement. And I was reading about you. It's funny, John O'Malley recommended you as a guest on this show. And I wasn't even familiar with your campaign, but I started doing some Googling and some researching. And it was amazing to me because you were quoted in a paper. And I'm going to read this to the audience. This is what you said, according to the paper. I am running for state representative, Democrat, District 49, because a fascist police state is being built on the bogus 9/11 event, and all the politicians and media are hiding the truth from the public. I want to be in the information loop so that I can help protect my constituents and defend the America I believe in. And I agree with the sentiment. I was just surprised that you could so openly say it, and you've won the primary. And it really shows how America is changing. The tide that we are on right now, it's so different than when I woke up back in 2005, 2006, and it's because of the work of people like you, people like the alternative media personalities that we all know, people like the activists that listen to the show out and go out and do things, waking others up. And to the audience, you know, people who think that, oh, we're never going to get anywhere because we haven't had 9/11 controlled demolition evidence put on the front page of the New York Times yet, they think that we've failed. Well, no, because all of these people, the perpetrators of 9/11, whoever they may be, however deep it may go, these people are not going to be around forever. But what we're doing is we're changing the face of America. We're making America more awake to this evidence, to this reality than ever before. And 9/11 has far-reaching implications, obviously. When you wake up to 9/11, it makes you up to other issues, too. So we're having an impact on the future. So regardless of what happens with this president, we are claiming the future. We are changing America one step at a time, and it's because of our guests, people like our guests today, just speaking boldly and unapologetically about the truth, about what 9/11 really was, that we are going to have a better future. And we just can't give up on that. Now, I want to know about your campaign. First of all, you wanted to fix things, obviously. That's the first step for most people. What made you want to run for office, do it in that path? What made you think that you could have a big impact choosing that strategy?
Well, it was kind of like I was squeezed into it. You know, it was incremental. First, you go to the, first I started writing posts and reading the news critically, and then I started going to meetings, and then I started writing more posts, and then I started being deleted and banned from the news sites in the state, and, there was only one step available to make an impact, and that was to actually run for office, because I don't believe anything that you're hearing in the news is accurate anymore. I think everything's for sale, everything's being spun, and I think you have to be directly in the loop to know exactly what's going on, and it was my attempt to find out what's going on.
So essentially it's like a fact-finding mission too, and the only way that you get information is by actually diving into the entity that you're trying to get more information on. I mean, is that an accurate way of summarizing what you just said?
Yes.
Now, when you were writing posts, where were you writing them to? Were you writing them to, like, newspapers, news websites?
Well, I started a blog last year called Adventures of a Greenhorn, and that kind of became a blending of politics and my reality on this ranch for a year. And then when I began my campaign for office, I created the Google Plus site, Erik Gale Hawk's Google Plus, and now I post everything there because I'm actually running everything straight off my smartphone, and it's easier to post to Google Plus than any of the other social media sites.
Now, that's funny, too, because when I was looking you up and researching you, the sites, the campaign site I saw referenced was one of these kind of social media type of sites, like you just said. I don't remember if it was the Google Plus one or not. You can correct me on that in a moment. But I talked about this. I had another candidate on a couple of weeks ago, Reed McCandless. He had actually run for the U.S. House of Representatives. He didn't win the primary. But we started speculating on how campaigns could be run, theoretically. And one of them was, create a social media site. For instance, and I'm not running for office, folks, but let's say I wanted to run for Congress or a certain office in a certain area. You don't need a lot of money. You create a social network page like on Facebook and just add everybody in the area and start putting out video blogs, little updates, news stories, reach people that way. It seems like that could be effective, if you're working on a small scale. It sounds like that's kind of what you're doing too. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Now, what do you put out? Like, your campaign is still going on. You're obviously doing something right. You won the primary. Describe the whole process of campaigning. What did the campaign look like in the primary? What are we going to be seeing as you go into November?
Well, it is, as you described earlier, like a fact-finding mission. So as I learn about candidate forums where the candidates introduce themselves and maybe are given a minute or two to say something, I attend those, and I try to share as much information as I can during the time allotment that has to do with what's going on around here. It's kind of been incremental, I went to some town hall meetings, then I would go to a trash meeting. That's a big issue going on around here. And then I would write about what I learned at those meetings and share it publicly so that everyone else could hear what was going on.
So you attend these events that are set up for the candidates, and you're talking largely about the local issues, and you're striking a chord, obviously, with people in your constituency because, obviously, they're voting for you. And how much does 9/11 come up in all of this, too? Are you sticking mostly to the local issues and saving the 9/11 stuff maybe for that quote in the paper, or does this come up, too, amidst talking about the local issues?
No, I keep the 9/11 stuff online. It is my tag, so that when you see the Google Plus site, the first thing you read is 9/11 was an inside job, so don't give up your rights. Vote Hawks. And I do believe that. I haven't really thought about it for years now because I haven't had a reliable internet connection where I could watch the videos like I used to. But, in my mind, there's no doubt of what actually happened, and it has nothing to do with Arab terrorists. It was Bush and Cheney and the whole machine. So I really don't bring it up when I'm talking to the locals. I speak to the local issues.
Now, and first, folks, I want you to listen to Erik here because this is the attitude that I want everybody to have. I've talked before about just confidence when talking about the issue and the difference between someone who might have 9 different degrees going on there on the television, but they might be more sheepish about talking about the evidence, more apologetic about it. They're not going to be listened to as much, but somebody who goes on there and just says, this is the way it is, certain laws of physics apply even on 9/11, and I don't care what you're saying. This is what happened that day. You can put your fingers in your ears all you want, but this is what happened. That second person is going to be listened to more with just the way that you portray yourself, and I love the way that you just stated. I mean that because it's the truth. And I'm not an engineer or an architect or a physicist, but I have enough common sense to know that the way Building 7 came down doesn't make any sense unless explosives were used. 105 feet of free fall, 8 stories of free fall is not possible unless they use explosives. Okay, I don't lie to myself, and so I bring it to the audience unapologetically, and I state it as fact because that is what it was, and so are you, and I know that appeals to people. I know because people want to listen to somebody who believes in what they are saying, that shows true leadership. That's the kind of person that people want to represent them on the platform where it matters, which is in government, because people want somebody there that is going to stick up for them. And it sounds like you're very concerned about what is happening in this country, about what's happening or what will happen to your constituency if we don't bring this lie to the eyes and ears of the world. So, congratulations. And I think people need to speak more confidently when they're talking about this topic. Now, I asked you about, the story of your campaign, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more. I'm trying to encourage members of the audience to do the same thing that you're doing, to run for office, whether it be on the state level or even the federal level. And so they can learn from this show, kind of like a how-to guide on how to do this stuff. So some people just don't know. They don't think they can do anything as an average person. So tell us, kind of the story about how you go about doing this. What's the first step if somebody wants to do what you're doing? And I know states differ, but to talk about what in New Mexico.
Well, my campaign is unorthodox. I'm running as a Democrat. I collected all the necessary signatures myself, and I filed the necessary paperwork and financial disclosures that they required. The first time that the county Democratic Party groups heard about me was when I was registered as a Democrat for the primary election. And then I attended their candidate forums and introduced myself and explained what I was about in the time that was allotted. I wish that there had been more time provided, but I do think that they kept it short for, their reasons. And then I shared all of my beliefs and positions as frequently as I could on the Google Plus page. Maybe I would receive a questionnaire that had been sent out by a particular lobby group, and I'd find some of the juicier questions and put them out for everybody to see. So I've been trying to keep it all, on the reel for everyone who's reading my Google Plus page, and so that rather than it being a static website where maybe there's a platform with, 10 different positions argued, I try and make mine real time, and as I live it and experience it, I share it with everybody, and they can see how it actually occurs.
And it sounds like you're kind of like the Rocky Balboa of politicians. I mean, that's kind of a cliche way of putting it, but I love this. I think this is absolutely amazing, and it's kind of funny how simply you're stating it very nonchalantly. That's pretty cool. But I think that everybody should be taking this as a lesson. Should be taking notes as they listen to this program, and it should be a confidence booster. I mean, again, you said you're running a very unconventional campaign. You're running a campaign in a way that I hypothesized could be done. And if you can do it, other people can do it. And, another thing, too, I always hear people, when you're talking about running for office, say that you need to raise a lot of money. And you hear this with the politics shows on CNN and Fox. They'll be talking about some race between the two candidates in a particular, maybe it's the House of Representatives seat, wherever. And they'll talk about how one person raised more money than this person, or is he going to be able to raise this much money, as if dollars equate to votes. And they say it because they present it like that. Like, you raise more money, you're going to win. And I always wonder, what are they going to spend that money on? Are they going to just spend it on an ad in a newspaper? Are they going to spend it on those little cards that you find on your doorknob when you come home? I mean, those little cards hanging on my doorknob doesn't influence who I'm going to vote for. And I can't imagine it influences other people either, so I've never understood that. And you're proving those pundits and poobahs on the television screen wrong just with what you're doing, because people who speak truth, that is what appeals to the most voters now, especially now, because things have just gone horribly wrong. I mean, the country has been driven into a ditch, and so people are sick of the same old, same old. I mean, the president goes on television, delivers the same phony lines. People are sick of that. People are sick of speeches and talking around folks. They're sick of the teleprompter readers. They want somebody that can actually give them some answers, somebody that speaks from the heart. That's why Ron Paul captured so many people's imagination. I mean, he wasn't helped along by the media at all, or by the even his own party. He was fighting against that, but there was he got a lot of supporters, more than any kind of quote-unquote unconventional candidate that I've seen, at least in my lifetime. And you're a testament to that. Now, within the Democratic Party, you talked a little bit about that. It sounds like they weren't too keen on your candidacy, that you were kind of fighting your own party in this process. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yeah. Nothing's been said directly, but, you can feel it. And I don't blame them. My primary platform piece is that I'm against public-private partnerships, which is when business and government work together to make money off the people. So a good explanation is any law that has a fine can be privatized, and then the private company collects the money and splits the take with the state. And that's complete fascism, but that's their solution for just about every category of problems going right now. And the governor, she's following the New Century Jobs agenda, which is nothing but public-private partnerships, and yet she hasn't said the term public-private partnerships even once in any of her State of the State addresses. And last year, there was a clawback bill that passed the state House of Representatives unanimously, 69-0. So both parties know what public-private partnerships are, and they support them, but they're not telling the public what they are, and neither is the media. And, because of that, both parties hate me, I believe.
That's wild. So I've never really gotten into this issue before, or this controversy. Now, with what you're saying, it sounds like you're really striking a chord with constituents. Like I said earlier, they voted for you. So your view, is this the general view of the folks that you're talking to as well when you go out and campaign?
Well, yes. One of the big public-private partnerships that we face on the San Augustine Plains is that they want to pump all the groundwater out and into a river to satisfy the Rio Grande Compact and for water delivery obligations to Texas. And they want to privatize that so that a private company will suck the groundwater out of the ground and pump it into the river at a profit. So it's better than a monopoly because it's a guaranteed profit stream, where it's always a cut above the cost. Or like with garbage, for instance. Right now, everyone has to pay some property tax for the garbage, the solid waste disposal. Well, rather than using the recyclable funds that could be generated through recycling to drive that garbage cost to zero for everybody, they're going to privatize the recycling side of the garbage so that the private company makes the profits, and then you still pay for the garbage. So it's like at some point there's a possibility that you would be double billing for one activity, whereas you should be able to eliminate the cost altogether.
That's wild. I mean, again, this is the first time I'm hearing about this issue, but that doesn't really sound fair. It sounds like people are being greased, the average public here, the average citizen, taxpayers, and it sounds like it's resonating. Your candidacy now, because we mostly focus on 9/11 on this show. I don't mind talking about these other topics. I'm just curious with the 9/11 part of it, because people, you see this reflected. I don't know if you've seen the campaign that was going on with C-SPAN, people calling into politicians. You can see they're afraid of talking about this, most of them, with the exception of Jim McDermott. Afraid of acknowledging that with Building 7, we have a point. It doesn't seem like your avid support of 9/11 truth has interfered at all with your stance and your success and popularity on these other issues. It hasn't influenced or hurt your quote-unquote credibility, even with people who may not know about this topic, may not even support it. I mean, is that a fair thing for me to say?
I would have to agree. I've tried to be as clear about my position as possible, and I look at it as a litmus test. I didn't know, for instance, how everybody would react to that 9/11 position. I haven't been asked about it by any local media, even though, I've been emailing local media, both print and online, for at least the last 3 or 4 years, probably thousands of emails. Like I said, I'm banned and deleted from all these places, and it's been, I've been following the public-private partnerships. I've been yelling about the Department of Homeland Security. Last June, Senator Dianne Feinstein from California. She chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee, and she was the one who revealed the NSA telephone surveillance program. And it turns out that the program requires quarterly reapproval. So every 3 months, it has to be reapproved by the Senate committee. Well, the Patriot Act, it's being done with authorization from the Business Records provision of the USA Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act was signed in October of 2001. And this NSA surveillance program was revealed in June of 2013. So it's possible that that program was reapproved 48 times prior to public disclosure. So it was
What's it say about America?
Until then.
Go ahead.
Yeah. All of these conspiracy theories are true. It's just, you know, you're ahead of the knowledge curve or where they want you to be.
Well, but I heard a quote from John F. Kennedy, and I always butcher quotes because I don't have them right in front of me, where it talks about how we're up against a monolithic conspiracy, and folks can debate about what conspiracy he's referencing, about whether or not it's the communists or something else. General opinion, the mainstream opinion is he's talking about the communists, but regardless, he's talking about the opposition, how they practice in secret. They do things in secret. How we don't do that in America. That's not what we're about. We're about open and transparent government within the narrowest margins of national security. And he makes a point of saying that, you know, that it's only a small little bit of secrecy that's needed in order to protect national security. But now everything is done in secrecy. Everything in the quote-unquote post-9/11 world, the government doesn't have to answer to the people anymore. It doesn't think that it does, even to the U.S. Congress. And all of this was predicated on the event that we talk about every week on this show, 9/11. It was the golden ticket for people who want a lot of power and want a lot of secrecy to get exactly what they wanted. All right, the golden ticket in the chocolate bar for them. So it's so important to speak out about this. Now, with the media, obviously, has given you some coverage, interviewed you. How do they treat your candidacy? And you said they didn't mention anything about your 9/11 stance.
Well, they actually published very little about the candidates. I was actually supposed to send a biography and a photograph to one outfit today, and I was supposed to send the Democratic Party $200 to publish it. And I told them I refused to pay them $200 to publish my name and my candidacy, basically. Because, see, they don't allow you to write an article about your position on anything. They don't want you to discuss information and issues. You're supposed to be a party candidate, so I'm supposed to be no different from any other Democrat. And I'm sure it's the same with the Republicans, you know. So they don't ask you about issues. They just want a biography in 150 words or less, and they want a photograph. And now it's to the point where they want to charge you for that. So, I try and share as much information on my Google Plus site as I can. I do have an overlap with my private life just for fun. I think where I live is unique, and what goes on around here is unique, and I like to share photographs and things like that. But there really hasn't been a one-to-one discussion on 9/11 or anything that's really important.
Now, I just want to get this straight, because this is probably new information for a lot of people. You're talking as an insider within the Democratic Party, and first of all, they want to charge you for publishing your info, but they don't want you to talk about the issues. They just want you to talk about what college you went to and what job you had. Did they actually forbid you from doing that, from talking about the public-private partnership or 9/11 or whatever your candidacy is going to be based on?
Basically, yes.
That goes right to the heart of why we can't, why we're having to struggle to get any traction with Congress right there, and why so many of them are afraid to speak out. And I've said it so many times, is that to get any position of quote-unquote power, to be a so-called leader of the people, and I dance between that word leader and representative a lot, because technically they're representatives, but we like to think of them as being a leader. They try to portray themselves as being a leader. So to be a quote-unquote leader, you have to strip away anything about yourself that would make you a leader. You have to strip away that common sense that makes you say, hey, that building falling down there, I'm being told that it's fire that caused that. That doesn't seem right to me. I think it was a controlled demolition. All right, to speak for yourself and speak the truth, to be able to say that 2 plus 2 actually equals 4 and not 5. You have to strip away that from your soul to fit into the club, to fit into the fraternity, to get that Democrat or Republican stamp next to your name and let the general public know that you're A-OK, that you're fit for office, because you're not going to do anything, that you're just going to toe the party line. And then who knows who's telling the parties what to do. And this really, this does apply to 9/11, because this is why we're having so much trouble politically getting through.
Right.
With the debates, because you showed up at these forums for candidates, what was that like? I imagine that it must have been pretty wild. You being such a outspoken guy, just so down to earth and kind of down home here, running your unconventional campaign. Do you have any stories, any interesting things that might have happened at these forums that you participated in?
Well, the other candidates primarily discuss their background, whether it's professional or whether it's where they live. Because of where I am here in Catron County and Socorro County, a lot of them are ranch families, so they've been here for eons. And it is really interesting to hear. But you don't hear any discussion about issues other than when I start talking. And basically then they're trying to shoo me off the stage. And I try and take as much time as I can before it really gets out of control.
Do you see, like, the uncomfortable looks? It's like this kind of weird, brittle, crab people tyranny that controls some of these organizations, where they want to be polite and they want to make you feel like your opinion is valued. Kind of like customer service for a corporation. I kind of feel like that's what runs this country right now. These systems. I think that's kind of why we have elections, is that people want to make you feel like your opinion is quote unquote valued, while things continue on happening the same, because nothing ever changes. It sounds like that's what you're running up against a lot. Nobody really has the guts to just come out and say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, but they get around it in a certain way. They try to nudge you and tell you, well, no, this forum really isn't for talking about issues. It's just let them know who you are. That's really what we're concerned with here. I mean, it just sounds like that's what you're running up against.
Right. And I'm the new guy here, so I am being as polite and respectful as I possibly can be. I share my opinions very clearly online, and everyone can go access them there. Where I am, I think more people rely on their smartphones or their internet connection than who actually own televisions. So, and in Catron County alone, it's 7,000 square miles, and there's 3,500 people. So it's like 1 square mile per person. So, you're not going to be placing street signs, except for maybe some key locations, but it's really not going to hurt you all that much, I don't believe. It appears to be so, at least, with the way that things are going so far. So I share the opinions clearly online, and I try and be polite when I'm in public.
Yeah, and I never really understood the need for signs other than let people know that you're in this election and you're still breathing. I think the important thing is to get your words out to the general public and speak as much as possible. Now, first you were up against the Democrat. Now you're up against the Republican in the general election, Super Bowl. Now, what's the difference? Has there been any difference in the previous race and between that and what you're up against now, other than the fact that it's a different party? Are you going to be doing anything different, any different kind of strategies or different issues coming up that you have to deal with?
Not really. The incumbent, his name's Don Tripp. He's been in office since 1998, which means that he was voted as a Republican when the Republican Party was still blue, because the party colors didn't switch until 2000. So now he's a red Republican, just like now Democrats are blue. But we're actually living in opposite land, because that is a recent phenomenon. It's historically been the other way around, and it still is the other way around in the rest of the world. So at some point, I think I'm going to have to ask him about that.
Now, once you get elected, and I'm being confident here, I think that it's your clear-cut approach is going to really resonate with a lot of people. Once you get elected and you're in the State House, regarding the issue of 9/11, what can you do, what can anybody do who gets in the State House to help further this cause, further the cause for getting a new investigation into 9/11 or getting some kind of government acknowledge of the controlled demolition evidence?
Well, I think, first of all, by being as outspoken as I am about it, I'm sure that that'll draw some attention. Secondly, it will definitely influence my perspective on laws that are being proposed. I am against the federalizing of law enforcement. I'm against Department of Homeland Security. I'm against the TSA. I'm against everything that basically came from 9/11. And I'm sure that's going to be an issue for many bills.
Now, what happens, in your opinion, if we don't do something? I mean, we've already done a lot, and so it's hard to ask that question because we have done a lot. But let's just say the 9/11 Truth movement dissolves tomorrow. What are you afraid happens to the country and to the people you're fighting for in New Mexico if this government is allowed to carry on and not acknowledge what really happened on that day?
Well, I mean, the way I see it, pretty soon your every whereabout and every purchase is going to be recorded and understood. What you buy and when you buy it is going to raise a threat level. In New Mexico, any police officer or law enforcement officer can stop any civilian for a simple safety check. So if all of a sudden, your purchases line up at the right time, you're just driving down the road, you're going to be pulled over and questioned. Then you're going to say something like, yes, I object to a search of my vehicle, and then they're going to bring a canine unit and a search warrant. I mean, it's like, the machine doesn't allow you to stop it. But I'm hopeful, if I can't stop or slow the machine down by becoming a state representative, then at least I can forewarn everybody about how they're coming, where they're coming, when they're coming, and then they can take, defensive, preventative measures.
And what gives you hope? I always ask this as a wrap-up question. Obviously, something's moving you, something's pushing you, you think you can make a difference, you are making a difference, something must be fueling you. What gives you hope with the 9/11 issue and the bigger picture, too, that we're going to have success collectively in the end?
You can't eliminate the truth. It'll always crack through. And I'm trying to push a crack open.
The candidate is Erik Gale out of the 49th District in New Mexico. He's going up for election in the general election in November. If you're a constituent, vote for him. If you are not a constituent but you know about him, spread the message, spread the word, let America know that this guy exists. Erik, thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Thank you very much.
Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download it by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week. Good luck.